Hello, I'm Llewellyn King, the host of MECFS Alert, and I'm in beautiful Incline Village, Nevada, about to talk to Dr. Konstance Knox, who's from Milwaukee, but has a close association with the institutions out here that are looking for a cure, or at least for a therapy for chronic fatigue syndrome. In some ways, Incline Village is ground zero for chronic fatigue syndrome because of the outbreak here in 1982. Dr. Knox, welcome to the broadcast. How long have you been interested in this disease?
I have been, my group, Dr. Kerrigan and myself, have been working with Dr. Peterson since about 1996.
Now, Dr. Peterson, of course, has been here a long time. It's Daniel Peterson, one of the best-known names in chronic fatigue syndrome research and treatment. And the other doctor you mentioned?
Dr. Kerrigan is my collaborator and my partner.
And what is it that you do that brings you into this orbit?
We began working with Dr. Peterson more than 15 years ago because of our interest in this patient population, especially their neurocognitive component of their illness. So we're an infectious disease group that has worked for many years developing models for viral infections of the central nervous system.
Do you think that chronic fatigue syndrome is an infectious disease?
I believe that chronic fatigue syndrome is precipitated by an infectious event. I believe that the pathogen may not be cleared. It could set up a persistent infection, or alternatively, the immune system makes an adaptation and becomes chronically activated, again, thinking that it's trying to contain whether it's a virus or a bacteria. And so over the course of this interaction between the immune system and this infectious event or infectious agent, there develops a state of confusion. And the immune system doesn't know when it should turn off. And over the course of time, it can evolve into an autoinflammatory component and potentially an autoimmune illness.
Now, with many chronic diseases, we don't have cures, but we have therapies.
That's correct.
We have ways of suppressing them so that people can lead normal lives. These include, I think, diabetes, and what else?
We have some therapies that have shown benefit in patients with multiple sclerosis. There are now many therapies being applied to different diseases, different autoimmune or autoinflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus erythematosus. We manage diabetes, again, thought to have an underpinning potentially in infection, but also thought to be an autoimmune, autoinflammatory disease. So those are some of probably the more common ones that people would be familiar with. And I personally believe that chronic fatigue syndrome is within that scale of illnesses. Chronic immune activation precipitated by or perpetuated by an infectious agent. The immune response to it has been disturbed, and whenever you're activated immunologically, inflammation, you're not going to feel well, and there's going to be very often consequences with respect to neurologic function.
Do you believe that that agent that triggers chronic fatigue syndrome to be viral?
I think that viruses are excellent candidates. I suspect it could be more than one agent. My own personal bias is I think there's a collaboration of these infectious agents, and we have some data to support that.
That's true of cancer, isn't it? There are many triggers for cancer.
There are many triggers for cancer, And we have to remember that cancer is a multi-step process. So while a triggering event may be required, it is most often probably not sufficient. So there are steps along the way. You can have cancer triggered by an infectious agent, and basically in the world about 20% of cancers have been confirmed to be associated with an infectious agent. But many people are exposed to these agents and they may not get cancer. So other things have to come into play, possibly an environmental exposure to a toxin as well, another assault, possibly your genetic, makeup that allows for the agent to get further along in replication, or perhaps you don't clear the infection as readily as someone else. So I think there's multiple steps required for disease to occur. And when that happens, we have blown past all of our, our bumper guards or our stop gaps. So it takes a bit to get to disease.
There's a sense here, and I've detected it in my reporting elsewhere, that we're on the cusp of something. That we're about to get something which will at least help in therapy. Do you have that feeling that there are breakthroughs hovering on the horizon?
With this patient population, the chronic fatigue syndrome, the ME, I think over the last 20 years, we have seen some consistencies in some immunologic disturbances. The NK cell function appears to be not up to speed. That would allow two things. That would allow for viral infections to get further down the road, and that would also allow for an errant tumor cell potentially to get established, because the natural killer cells are our surveillance system, or one arm of our surveillance system. So we've learned an amount about the patients immunologically, and there's significant overlap between what we see in CFS and what we see in other autoimmune disorders such as multiple sclerosis. I see that CFS is more like MS than it is different. And so I think as we look at therapies that are benefiting patients with rheumatoid arthritis, for example, the Rituxan studies, or MS, these are the kind of therapies I think that will, one, benefit some of these patients, but also they will help us dissect the mechanism of what is going on.
We have private research going on all over the country, or in spots over the country, generally underfunded. Where does Simmaron fit into this picture, and how will they move this whole project forward?
I think part of the energy with Simmaron, well, it stems from Dr. Peterson, who is a very energetic individual, and Dan Peterson somehow is able to elicit enthusiasm from investigators from different fields. So again, I was not historically a researcher in chronic fatigue syndrome. My research was infectious agents in transplant patients, HIV, MS. But Dr. Peterson has individuals such as myself, and he is collecting investigators. We have a collaboration going with someone whose area of research is cancer and lymphoma. And so what we have going on in Incline Village and in Simmaron research are groups of individuals who are committed to, again, dissecting the mechanism of what is at the basis of this illness and where can we intervene.
And your base, your home, is in Milwaukee, but you
Yes.
travel here quite often.
Yes.
But you do much of your own research in Milwaukee.
I do much of my own research. The laboratory component of my research is done in Milwaukee, but many of the ideas, the insights, avenues for studies come from interactions within the, our group and from other individuals that have different expertise. Rheumatologists, again, cancer specialists, immunologists, all of these and other specialties.
What is the linkage between fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome? They're often used in the same sentence, and
they're different. They're different illnesses. They're frankly quite distinct, but often overlap. So many fibromyalgia patients will also have a chronic fatigue syndrome component, or vice versa. So they often travel together, but they don't necessarily have to travel together.
Dr. Konstance Knox, it's a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
If you would like to sponsor MECFS Alert, please contact us at mecfsalert@gmail.com. Help us to help you.